Good morning, everyone. We just have a minute yet before we start. And yeah, this of course reminds me of the pandemic. Spent a lot of time teaching from my office back then. I guess you can all hear me. That's fine. Like I said, we have another minute before we start here. And so let's see, what's this? Somebody sent me, all right, that's nothing there. Okay. So okay, it's 9 o'clock. So let me, before I forget, go ahead and do the smart attendance. So I always want you to be able to see whatever it is I'm doing. So I'm going to go to the smart attendance page and open that up here, and then make sure that you can see what I'm doing. So once I get the attendance set up here, we are in week 13 and smart attendance. So we go here to share screen, and hopefully there it is. Open it up. And there you can see there is the attendance screen, and your smart attendance number is 645. 645 is your smart attendance number. And so following standard procedure, what do I typically do in Zoom? I go to the Zoom chat, and I put in 645 is your Zoom chat number there in the chat box, so you can see that. And okay, today's our short class, so let me again also share the screen for the lesson plan for today. And I showed a couple of what's that? I can close that. I don't need that. What is that? That's an empty page. Just a second here. Let me close that. And close that since we don't need that. Okay, so you can see that. I think that's the lesson plan. So nobody signed up for debate on Friday. Of course, you still always can if you haven't and you want to. You should do that soon. And before I forget, of course, your first draft of your final take-home paper is due on Saturday, and so I will also be setting up meeting times for you to meet with me in my office or on Zoom, like we did with the midterm. But I, wanted to get the course all organized before we think about organizing the meeting sessions because of the strangeness of starting the week on a Thursday. So we're still technically in week 13, even though this is called week 14 because I'm considering this week to be just to keep everything as least confusing as possible. So we are now covering the Europeanization of national economies. And of course, if you have questions, you can always ask me questions. There's no problem there. I'm trying to recall how to well, let me go back to the class there, and let me. Of course, I'm always thinking about how to get you as excited about this course material as possible, and also to repeat the point I made earlier that this book was published in 2020. It came out during the pandemic, and so that means it was finished, on the eve of the pandemic. So it's already 4 years old. And so much has happened since then, and of course, with the pandemic and then the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and so we're trying to expand and develop the content that's in the book itself in order to show you how the concepts are evolving in relationship to these latest crises that have occurred in European integration with the pandemic and then the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and then see how this also fits within a broader understanding of European integration being strongly under the impact of the broader international system level that we talked about before. Remember, we talked about Kenneth Waltz's book, Man, the State, and War, and how to explain, for example, how European integration has evolved and developed, that it's also any kind of explanation of anything international relations includes requirements, understanding of the individual decision makers involved, like Angela Merkel or Olaf Scholz or Joe Biden or Emmanuel Macron, and also the nature of the politics at a state level within each of these countries. Obviously, British nationalism is critically important for understanding Brexit. for example. But also, we also have to include elements at the international system level of analysis, factors at the international system level analysis. And the development of the European Union, in my view, in my analysis, my inference as somebody who claims to be a political scientist, that so much of Russia's political behavior is reactive to the European integration under American hegemony, under American predominance. And for good or bad, Russia's reacting against that, and that's very much an important factor for explaining the Russia escalation of its intervention in Ukraine in February last year. So you've heard this before from me more than once, of course, and that is reflected in many different aspects. For example, also in the Europeanization of the Ukrainian economy, right? We highlighted how the Ukrainian political economic reforms to reform their economy were very slow after the breakup of the Soviet Union, in part because of the particularities of the Ukrainian state, Ukrainian identity in the post-Soviet era. And then, of course, Russia's invasion of Ukraine has instigated or made latent, very latent but powerful Ukrainian nationalism much more salient and active. And that reforming of the Ukrainian economy and the political system also is very much oriented towards following a European integration blueprint. And so it of course, there's no chapter in the book on Ukraine, right? But the Ukrainian case illustrates intensely these factors that are involved in the book, because for Ukraine, Ukrainization is considered to be, rightly or wrongly, it's considered to be a life and death issue for Ukrainian nation state. That for Ukrainian national self-expression through a sovereign state, that Europeanization is critically important to meet the Russian threat, right? Unfortunately, that's where we're standing right now, that Europeanization is seen in opposition to Russian influence. And that's not new. That's not some profound insight. I mean, it's nothing that's really been hidden. It's been that way for decades in European integration, going back to, well, let's take a more obvious case. I mean, the case of Bulgaria. I mean, I was just openly covered in the Financial Times newspaper. I used and cited those sources, those news reports from 15 years ago or longer, that, that Bulgaria was not really prepared to enter the European Union. It hadn't carried out enough economic and political reforms, according to the European Commission. But the member states of the European Union at the time decided in 2007 that Bulgaria must be brought in. That's 16 years ago, must be brought into the European Union because they wanted to circumvent and reduce Russian influence in Bulgaria. Russian influence in Bulgaria. So, that was just openly reported in the Financial Times. It wasn't something that was secret. It was in the Financial Times newspaper, the most influential English language business newspaper in Europe. And of course, that's even more so the case in Ukrainian reforms. And so, but I think what I wanted to highlight here is how, again, since Russia's part of Europe, it's a controversial claim for me to make, and it's generated some pretty hostile responses, as I mentioned when I went to this conference in Pittsburgh earlier this month, that that European integration is perceived as a threat within the prevailing view in the Russian government today. Now, that government will change, maybe there will be some kind of regime change, maybe not in Russia. I doubt it. But currently, the dominant view characterizing the rulers in Moscow today is that that European integration is a danger to Russia, Russian influence, Russia's status in the world, Russia's prestige. I'm sure among some people, even Russia's existence as they understand Russian national identity. And so how are the Russians reacting? Since Russians have always had this love-hate relationship with Europe, going back to what I described on Friday regarding earlier, right? The Slavophiles versus the Westernizers conflict or debate in the Russian Empire 200 years ago in the 1830s, that the Russian government today, for example, just to show you a news report I came across today. Of course, what has Russia's response been to European integration? Well, one of its responses has been to, under Putin, to advocate the creation of a Eurasian economic union, And of course, this is what Putin back in 19 years ago, in 2000 or 10 years ago, in 2013, was pressuring Ukraine to join, not to sign a free trade agreement with the European Union. No, Ukraine should not sign a free trade agreement with the European Union, but rather to sign a trade integration agreement with the Eurasian Economic Union. And the Eurasian Economic Union is this organization that Putin is advocating as basically an alternative to the European Union for the former Soviet member states. And so, of course, a lot of these. Let me see if I can open up the. I know I have a. I think I thought I have the. Eurasian Economic Union. So make sure that I do this correctly to show you the Wikipedia page for it here. You can see here, here's the Wikipedia entry for the Eurasian Economic Union. And the Eurasian Economic Union is an economic union of some post-Soviet states located in Eurasia. The Treaty on Eurasian Economic Union was signed on 29 May 2014. Of course, this is after the Euromaidan revolution that overthrew the pro-Russian president of Ukraine at the time because he refused to sign a free trade agreement with the European Union. But you can see that they've formally launched this Eurasian Economic Union, and since one of the themes in the book, the chapter, and the book more broadly that we've been highlighting is this role of European Union member states learning from each other, sharing common knowledge, and in terms of best practice and benchmarking, and the open method, and the European Union formally recognizing that method of policymaking called the open method of coordination, right? The OMC, open method of coordination, we covered last class, the open method of coordination. So I was reading the BBC Monitoring Service news reports yesterday and the day before, every day, and I came across this news report highlighting this meeting of the Eurasian Economic Union. And so you can see it here, if I can find it, the Eurasian Economic Union highlighted here. And you can see in this news report, this is not what I want here. Let me see if I can open it up here. There it is. So, okay, so let me stop the share and show you the screen again here. And so you can see the Eurasian Economic Union. This is the transcript of the speech. Text of report in English by Russian presidential website. So this is posted on Vladimir Putin's website in Moscow in English. So it was already translated from Russian into English. So in other words, they want you to see it. They want us, the whole world, to read this because they've translated it into English and posted it on the website. And so Vladimir Putin took part in the plenary session of the Eurasian Economic Forum. And I'm not going to go through it all here. Obviously the transcript of Putin's translated speech from Russian into English. But I just wanted to show you what they make reference to, these concepts from the European Union, that are evident even in this speech. So let me scroll down here to the bottom, and you see reference to here let me see if I can find it as I scroll down here to these different people who are speaking, these different leaders of these different Eurasian Economic Union companies speaking, speaking at this forum, including the president of Belarus, the president of Kazakhstan, speaking at this event, other individuals speaking. And you see that there's this reference here in this transcript. As I scroll down to the bottom here, there was one sensitive, I should have highlighted that, there it says here, there was one sensitive aspect, a conceptual reality. Who's speaking here? Let me see here. It must be, I think it must be Putin speaking. Oh, no, this is the president of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev. So the president of Kazakhstan is speaking here, and he speaks that there was one more sensitive aspect, the conceptual reality, so to speak, of a circumstance that we need to take into account. He says, I'm referring to an entity within the framework of the Eurasian Economic Union, the union state of Belarus and Russia. So he's commenting upon how Russia and Belarus have created a union state that looks like it's the beginnings of the assimilation of Belarus into Russia. And he notes, the president of Kazakhstan, that now Russia and Belarus are even sharing their nuclear weapons, which If you read this report, it seems problematic. In other words, Kazakhstan has a long, long border with Russia. And I just get a sense from reading this statement that the president of Kazakhstan is worried about what might be the future of relations between Russia and Kazakhstan, because there's a big portion of Kazakh territory that there's disputed among Russian nationalists that view that part of Kazakhstan, in the northern part of Kazakhstan, was taken from Russia in the way many Russian nationalists view territory was taken from Russia and added to Ukraine under the communist system in the old Soviet Union. And the same is true with Belarus. But that's a separate topic. I think I wanted to highlight here, maybe I have the wrong, let me see if I can find it here. Is this it? I had it here somewhere. Oh, what did I do with it? One sec. Oh, here it is. That's right before my eyes here. So let me again open this up. So stop share and let me show it to you here. So we go here and open this up and show you this. And this is Putin is addressing the Supreme Eurasian Economic Council. So there's a Supreme Eurasian Economic Council, again, from about the same time that this meeting's going on. And he calls upon the advocating this Eurasian Economic Union. Remember, we talked about social identity theory, and individuals and groups are always comparing themselves with each other and want a positive self-image. And if they compare themselves with each other, if I compare myself with another group and I come away from that comparison feeling bad about me, I come away feeling negatively. I come away feeling that the comparison makes me look poor. I can respond in different ways, right? I can engage in social competition. I can engage in social mobility, try to join the European Union and become European, right? Social mobility. Social competition means destroy the other side. That other side's win is my loss, and my win is their loss. So zero-sum relationship, and then also social creativity. Create a separate, different way of evaluating status so that I compare myself in a positive way by changing the evaluation criteria. So here you see Putin is advocating this Eurasian Economic Union, and he says here, we need to make sure that our people are in the Eurasian Economic Union are comfortable, feel at home when they come to work, study, or do business in one or the other Eurasian Economic Union members countries. We can achieve this by supporting real 100% freedom of movement of goods, services, finances, and human capital. That's the four freedoms of the single market of the European Union, the famous four freedoms that the European community, then the European Union, has been advocating for decades now. And so you see even the Russians are talking about the four freedoms in the Eurasian Economic Union, that you don't need to join the European Union to become modern and developed. You can do it by joining the Eurasian Economic Union under Russian leadership as part of the Russian world. And to scroll further down, Putin is continuing. This is Putin's speech, and I think this is this is on the Russian website. This is on the Russian president's website in English. It's been translated already into English by the Russian presidency and posted on the Russian presidency website. So they want you and me and the whole world to read it, right? Because it's in English. I would also like to outline a new and apparently promising area of cooperation. I propose introducing, in addition to the four fundamental freedoms of movement, including goods, services, finance, and human capital, again, the four freedoms within the Eurasian Economic Union, a fifth freedom, which is the freedom of knowledge based on the general principles of standards of education, healthcare, and public administration. Again, the open method of coordination, best practice, benchmarking, right? Sharing best practice. Learning from each other, which that's a theme in our textbook, right? That has been an understudied, underappreciated aspect of European Union economic integration. It's benchmarking, it's sharing best practice, and it's recognized in the European Union officially as a method of policymaking through the open, as it's called, the open method of coordination, right? And so here you see they even borrowed that in this Eurasian Economic Union for the former Soviet states under Russian hegemony. in the so-called Russian world. I mean, this is really interesting, right? That even as the Russians have this hostile perspective on European integration because they think it's basically dominated by the United States, the Russians see a threat to their own status and prestige in the world. They want to be perceived as equal with the Americans. They want to be perceived as status equal with any other actor in the world. Particularly against the United States. So even going so far as, for example, creating their own alternative to the European Union, the Eurasian Economic Union, and even they have their 4 freedoms of goods, services, capital, and human labor, right? And the 5th freedom, sharing of knowledge. And this should contribute to the formation of a common cultural space, and if you will, a common Eurasian ideology. We just discussed this in some detail before you joined us and agreed informally on how important this is for all of us. This is especially important for young people, for the younger generation, for young people, right? And of course, that's what the European Union targets. Is European Union really is hoping to build its support most strongly amongst young people like you and in your age group, that you are the future enthusiasts for European integration. So you can see they're even talking about targeting young people for the Eurasian Economic Union. I mean, this is interesting, and I almost said weird, but I guess it's just, again, this reaction about Russia wanting to be perceived as an equal to the United States in the world, particularly for a number of self-serving reasons, and these are self-serving justifications, given what Russia's role was in European history, most recently in defeating the Germany in World War II, Nazi ideology in World War II. So I just came across this yesterday, and I thought, my gosh, this is really interesting. They're even talking about copying and borrowing from the European Union and benchmarking, which has been like one of the major themes of your reading of your textbook. So, okay, so there is a lot of work ahead, Vladimir Putin concludes. First of all, we need to focus on achieving the first of the 4 freedoms, the free movement of goods. This includes creating a single and truly barrier-free market and ensuring the unhindered transit of goods to third countries. I believe that the full achievement of these goals should be the key area of work for governments and the Eurasian Economic Commission. So they even have a Eurasian Economic Commission. A Eurasian Economic Commission. There's a Supreme Eurasian Council, which sounds like the European Council. But what they don't have, I haven't heard references to electing a Eurasian Parliament, like a European Parliament. No, in my reading of the BBC monitoring service, they have reference of the need to strengthen the Eurasian Economic Commission, and this is a meeting of the Supreme Eurasian Council here, which is the Supreme Eurasian Economic Council, not a Supreme Eurasian Council. This is the Eurasian Economic Union, not the Eurasian Union. But my question to you is, having given what we've been covering here through the semester in the class, again, there's no right or wrong answer to this question, but I would like you to please respond to the following statement. True economic integration requires liberal democratic regimes in the integrating states. So true international integration requires democracy among the integrating states. That you have to have liberal democratic governments among the members of a union like the European Union or a Eurasian Union. They need to be democratic governments in order to have true, genuine, valid integration. So what do you think? And so let me divide you up into groups. So just to copy paste this and go back to the cyber campus here, and let's see, break you up into breakout rooms. So how many people are here today? So let's see, we've got 7 people. So if we assign you into 3 groups, assign automatically. So we create, and I'm going to assign you to these 3 different rooms, and I would like you to decide where your group fits on this scale. And before we start, let me ask Siri. So you can see we have 6 people. in the class. So I'm going to ask Siri, who's going to speak for this group, each group. So I'm going to, if it's number one, it's going to be the first person in the group. If it's number two, it's going to be the second person in the group. So let me ask Siri. Siri, pick a number between 1 and 2.
It's 2.
Okay, so thank you, Siri. Siri picked 2. So that means it's going to be Yukon Bean for room 1, Eugene Kim for room 2, and Yuna Hirai for room 3. So I'm going to open all the, well, let me go ahead and again, just post the question here. And so you can see I sent that to your, through the chat function. And let me open up the rooms and decide where your group fits on this scale of strongly agree to strongly disagree, and explain as to why, please. So I'm going to open all the rooms, and so you'll have just a minute or two to decide what your group's position is, given, and you know that I see number 2 has been picked. So again, it's going to be Yukon Bean speaks for room 1, Kim Eugene will speak for room 2, and Yuna Hirai will speak for room 3. So I'm going to open the rooms now. So please join the groups. Okay, and please decide where you are. Oh, we have a new person has joined. So Hyojin. Okay, so Hyojin, let me ask Siri. So 1, 2, or 3. Siri, pick a number between 1, 2, and 3.
It's 11.
Oh shit. Screwed that up.
2, please.
No, not you. I'm gonna ask Siri to assign you. Siri, pick a number between 1 and 3. No,
3.
not you. Just a second. I want Siri to pick the number. Siri, pick a number between 1 and 3.
1 and 3. 1.
Okay, so you're going to join room 3, Hyojin. So I'm going to assign you to room 3. So you're now assigned to room 3, according to Siri.
Okay.
So Yukon Bean, Suming Park, you know what to do, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm going to leave the room. Okay, Kim Eugene, and so you understand what to do, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So,
Oh.
nope.
Okay, so now we're going to ask Siri to choose one of the 3 rooms to talk first. So let me ask Siri. Siri, pick a number between 1 and 3.
It's 2.
Okay, Siri, pick 2. So Kim Eugene for room 2. Kim Eugene, what did your group decide in terms of where it fits on this scale, Kim Eugene?
So our team decided, so when it comes to international integration, our team decided number 3, neutral cannot decide,
Why?
because well, it is ideal to say to be integrated with the regime of liberal democratic. However, even if there's no this kind of regime, we felt like we could also do the integration, but it will be different. Like it's not gonna be the ideal integration. However, when we talk most deeply more about the European integration, I personally think the liberal democratic regime is required.
Yeah.
Considering the main leading country of EU is Germany and France right now.
Yeah.
And thinking about the characteristic of those 2 countries,
Okay.
I think it's
Yeah, I mean, I guess
required.
if we look here and let me make sure you're able to see what I'm able to see, because I'm not always completely certain that the cyber campus is showing. I mean, the screen share is showing what I want to show. So here I say, how do you define what integration is? So I copy, I looked up integration on Google, and this is the definition I came across for integration. So make sure you can see that. So I go to here, and you can see it says here that according to dictionary, to integrate, 1, combine one thing with another so that they become a whole. And then, but more interestingly, here is number 2. 2, bring people or groups with particular characteristics or needs into equal participation in or membership of a social group or institution. An example they give is integrating children with special needs into ordinary schools. So this notion of integration meaning equal participation. How do you convince people that they are equally valued if they are different? Remember, in terms of social identity theory, social creativity is when I engage in thinking to make myself feel good about myself, that I am different from Germans if I'm Italian, but I bring something equal. I'm an equal. I have my status. I'm respected as an equal to Germans and French as an Italian, right? And so how do you do that? And it would seem to be a necessary, if not sufficient, requirement to bring that possibility of social creativity to occur. Is you need to have democratic, legitimate governments in representing the nations of the state members of the European Union. That the leaders of those nation states have to be perceived as representing the nation. And that how do you convince the people of your country that the leader represents them? Well, you have participation, you have elections, you have democratic elections that somehow become processes and procedures or formal expressions of norms and ethics within the society that says that, Joe Biden is the president of the United States. He represents the Americans. Emmanuel Macron represents the French, right? Who represents the Koreans? Of course, that's more problematic because Korea has been divided into 2 states since 1950. And that caused a lot of grief, right? In Japan, we know that, the emperor and the prime minister represent Japanese people. We don't even have to think about it. We just assume it, right? So that somehow this seems to be necessary for what we are calling true integration, which means integration in which it's not an empire. Well, one way to integrate Korea or other countries into another country is through conquering them, right? The British Empire was integrated with India integrated into the British Empire, but the Indians were not equals with the British. They were a colony. They were possession of Great Britain, right? So empires are not the kind of integration that we're referring to when we talk about bring people or groups with particular characteristics or needs into equal participation. And what counts is what they believe. Do they believe that they are equally participating in the European Union? Do they believe that they're equally participating within this Eurasian Economic Union? The Kazakhs, the Turkmen, the Uzbek. I mean, do they believe that they are equal? I mean, I don't know. I mean, those regimes are not ideal liberal democratic regimes, obviously. Putin's Russia, I guess Putin is popular. I mean, I guess how many people view him as representing the Russian nation, I guess, is a prevailing view. Although at the same time, elections, they still feel the need in Russia to go through the role play of having some kind of elections, even though the elections are rigged or influenced to make sure they come out in a favorable direction. What seems to be more important in Russia is order. That the typical Russian citizen reviews Putin as the leader of Russia because he is the one who's able to maintain control and order over the society. Which, in contrast to Boris Yeltsin in the 1990s, when Russia was, again, in a crisis era in which the entire economy of Russia was about the same size as Belgium's economy, in which inflation destroyed most people's savings because the money that was inherited from Soviet times became worthless because of inflation. Lots of comparisons with Weimar Germany in the 1920s and how it went into crisis because of economics suffering and the great inflation and the Great Depression led to the rise of Hitler. And Hitler, I guess you could consider him to be legitimate. But of course, at the same time, there was a large minority of people within Germany that hated Hitler, but were terrorized and keeping their mouths shut, right? And if they weren't going to keep their mouths shut, they would be thrown in prison, thrown in concentration camps, or they had to flee. They had to leave Germany, back in the 1920s and 30s and go to other countries, like many came to America. So that seems to be a critical point. And so, like I mentioned, they still don't have, there's not been a discussion of electing a Eurasian parliament for the Eurasian Economic Union. Like there's a European parliament for the European Union. So let me go on then and ask the other groups. So we go back to breakout rooms. So that was room 2. And so let me ask Siri again, see between 1 and 2. So number 1 will be room 1, number 2 will be room 2. Siri, pick a number between 1 and 2.
It's 2.
Okay, so Yuna Harai, what did your group decide? Where do you fit on this scale, Yuna, in terms of do you think that basically for a country to have a genuine integration, true international integration requires liberal democratic regimes in the integrating states?
I think we're in neutral. Neutral, because we think liberal democratic regimes looks ideal, and I think they would have a positive impact. But if we had them, but Russia, for example, is a country without them. And if other institutions supplement liberal democratic regimes, there is no need to always have them.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, I guess the question is, at some point, is there something inherently authoritarian about these former Soviet states? They can never democratize. I mean, they can never become democracies because, and there's a danger in this way I'm talking now, because it can slip into stereotyping, right? That there's something inherently authoritarian in Russian culture that means democracy will never work. I don't know if, I don't like those kinds of arguments. I mean, there was a democracy in Russia in the 1990s, but the Russian dominant view, not the only view, but the dominant view in Russia was that was a disastrous time when Boris Yeltsin was president of Russia after the Soviet Union broke up in the 1990s, that it was a complete criminal chaos in Russia, that again, and that much of the Soviet era property was taken or expropriated by what we call the oligarchs today. My point is that for your typical Russian, the 1990s is not considered to be a great positive period in Russian history, and that's the period of democratization when the communist system collapsed. Boris Yeltsin was a Democrat, but he had many problems. He had to fight wars in Chechnya as Chechnya attempted to break away. He himself was an alcoholic, and then before he resigned from office, he appointed Vladimir Putin as his replacement, and that was how Vladimir Putin emerged to become the dominant leader of Russia, and he stayed there ever since the year 2000, 1999, 2000. He's been the dominant actor in Russia, and so yeah. At the same time, however, there's a significant minority of the population that acquiesced to Putin's rule. But then when the war with Ukraine escalated last year, hundreds of thousands of Russians fled Russia because they didn't want to be forced to serve in the Russian military in fighting in Ukraine. So tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of Russians left, predominantly younger people with skills who could work in foreign languages. They left and they went to Georgia, they went to Armenia, they went to wherever they could go, where, typically places where that, they felt comfortable because there was a large Russian presence historically. And so there's clearly a significant minority of people, but a minority that do not support Vladimir Putin's behavior. But of course, they're terrorized into keeping their mouths shut. They're terrorized into not, because if you even say the wrong thing, if you can be thrown in jail, right? If you call the military invasion of Ukraine a war, you can be put in jail for years in Russia. Like I said, it's becoming an authoritarian populist state, right? And so that's, I think, part of the reason why the president of Kazakhstan, he is nervous about what's going on in Russia, because I think in part because of the fear that basically Russian nationalists might, demand border change with Kazakhstan as well, like they have demanded with Ukraine, and how they basically have taken over Belarus. Lukashenko is still the president of Belarus, but Russian military is there now. Russian personnel are there. Basically, it's been, in effect, it's dominated by Russia, and Lukashenko himself is sick. So what will happen if he passes, if that's just going to be annexed into Russia? So let me go to the next work group, and that is Yukon Bean, room 1. Where does your group fit, Yukon Bean, on this scale?
So our group chose 4 out of 5. We believe that liberal democratic regimes are necessary to achieve true international integration. The reasons are that these kind of regimes, first of all, if you want, the reason that the countries are working on to gain international integration is because it's mostly influenced by the strong countries or the developed countries on the global world. And what most of these powerful and developed countries have are liberal democratic regimes, which might be required from the other countries' perspectives, because integration has to ultimately somehow fit together. And in order to even try to fit with these other countries that have their country based on democratic regimes, I personally believe that it's a must.
Okay, but you said disagree. You said 4 or 5. Do you mean 2 or 3, 1 or 2?
Oh, yes, I agreed. I agreed. Yes.
Yeah. Because one way to integrate, I mean, if you call integration is empire build, right? I mean, Germany under Hitler wanted to integrate Europe within a German empire, a 1,000-year Reich, which of course is it's got to be based fundamentally upon coercion. To have to terrorize people to shut up, to stop resisting. So integrate. It depends on how you define what integration is, right? You can talk about true. What does true integration mean? Basically, it means according to that definition, the people that are equal participation, even though people and actors are different. And again, you can understand it from a social identity theory perspective, right? That that if you're going to integrate groups of people, you integrate people, that you need to act to make them feel not just that they are integrated, but that actually they are valued, they are equal. So the example they use, of course, this is more public policy, this isn't European integration, but of course, since Europe is all about building support among youth, among women, amongst traditional groups that are traditionally marginalized, people that are viewed as marginal, viewed as bad, inferior, like LGBTQ people that are gender minorities, that you want to build support among those people, and women are half the population, right? So we're not talking just about minorities of population, we're talking about the majority of the population, that that you should support the European Union, because the European Union is truly working to integrate traditionally marginalized groups like women, disabled, LGBTQ people into feeling equal and valued members of society, that society must adopt policies to make the fact that only half the population is able to get pregnant, right? So should that half the population that's able to get pregnant, should be penalized in their careers because they're born to be as people that can get pregnant. So European Union should adopt policies and push the member states to allow for maternal leave, to allow men to take off maternal leave to raise children instead of only women doing that. All of the modern progressive policies that the European Union attempts to promote in Europeanizing the political economy of European member states, as this effort to try to build support for European integration, targeting certain groups, knowing, of course, that it's going to be more likely to get support from younger people. And of course, these traditionally marginalized groups that are, typically, not, the traditional dominant groups within society, which is typically assumed to be, heterosexual men. So white men, heterosexual white men, let's since big growing portions of these populations are not white, as they immigration from the former colonies of the French Empire, the British Empire comes in, of course, and now from the Middle East, coming into Germany and elsewhere from Syria, Turkey, Iraq, Afghanistan, Africa, that this is all part of being European as well. Okay, so on that note, let me then give you some participation credit opportunities. So let me go to vote here and make sure you can see this. And I've got to, go to the share screen. And so we go down here and we go to, please respond to the following statement that true international integration requires liberal democratic regimes in the integrating states. So please vote on that, please. You can see the screen. And so it seems like basically everybody's already voted. Okay, all right, there we go. Okay, and but yeah, again, I spend a lot of time reading the BBC monitoring service, and it takes a big chunk of the day, but I feel like I have to do it. I mean, in terms of what's going on. But then I come across these great reports that, wow, just yesterday, the 4 freedoms of the Eurasian Economic Union, free movement of goods, services, finance, capital, and human capital or labor. And then the 5th freedom, sharing of knowledge, which is the open method of coordination. I mean, they must get this from the European Union. Like, we're going to do this in the Russian world. You don't need to join the American dominant European Union. You can do it within Russia, within the Ruski Mir, Russian world, Ruski Mir, right? I mean, it's really fascinating. And okay, but on that note, I will stop the class, right, and take a break before I open up for American politics. Any questions? Yeah, your first draft of your final papers due Saturday. Okay, bye.